Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host as always, Dan, your co-host Shaq. We're going to be talking UFC 243, Robert Whittaker versus Israel Adesanya. And Shaq, it's going down this Saturday in Melbourne, Australia. The middleweight championship is on the line, and one man's going to walk away the undisputed middleweight champion of the world.
It's good to see the champ, Robert Whittaker, back. We haven't seen him in a long time. He was supposed to fight Kelvin Gastelum at the last Australian pay-per-view card, and now his opponent, Israel, who took his main event spot there, is going to be his opponent now, and this has been a showdown in the making for a long time. Israel thinks Rob's a fake Kiwi. Rob, early on, he did say, he said Israel's not as good as he thinks he is, and this and that. So I'm glad to see these two, the adopted Australian Adesanya against
adopted Kiwi
Adesanya against the adopted Aussie and Whittaker. So I'm excited to see these guys settle their differences.
Man, I love the back and forth because Adesanya called Robert a fake Kiwi, and Robert's like, well, if I'm a fake Kiwi, what does that make him? You know what I mean? So I love the back and forth, and you know for a fact when those two get in there, it's going to take a lot for one of those men to shoot for a takedown, in my opinion, Shaq.
Yeah, I mean, Israel's ground game's been getting a lot better like we saw in his last fight against Kelvin. Had him in and out of some triangles there. And Whittaker, we know that he's beaten the likes of Jacare before, Rafael Natal. He's been a list of black belts before, so his grappling shouldn't be slept on either.
I mean, not only has he beat black belts, he's beat Olympic wrestlers like my boy Yoel Romero. So he's definitely got a resume on him. But when you talk about Israel Adesanya, every champion was once a contender. And this kid... he's taken the UFC by storm. I mean, he made his UFC debut early last year, man. He's barely been in the UFC 2 full years, and he's already got the chance to become the undisputed champion. And I have a feeling if he wins this fight, he's going to be one of the biggest superstars in the sport.
Yeah, everyone each fight keeps on saying this is too much. They thought Anderson might possibly be a little bit too much. Kelvin Gastelum, we thought this might be his first L time, and he just keeps passing every test. They fast-tracked this guy because they felt like he was ready for it, and he's proven a lot of people wrong along the way. Whittaker, he's in a little different spot. We know the old Rob, the guy that beat Yoel Romero twice, but we do know that the second one, in some people's eyes, was controversial. We know that there was a lot of damage sustained on both sides. Some people think that both guys might not never be the same after a fight like that. So I'm interested to see how he looks after this extensive layoff in which he had to go to a hospital for an emergency. I forget what hernia, you know what I'm saying? So, and there's been some other injuries along the way. So, two guys in different spots. I'm interested to see how it plays out.
And, I mean, they talk about the two Yoel wars, but you and I were front row for the Israel versus Kelvin Gastelum war. So, it's not like Israel Adesanya didn't get his chin checked in April in Atlanta, Georgia, because he definitely did.
He fought a guy with an 100% knockdown rate, and he had to come back from the knockout. And for a guy that was only in a fight with kind of a different type of fight with Anderson Silva, I don't want to say it was a fight. It was just more of a
exhibition match.
An exhibition match.
A show for the fans.
A show for the fans. And his prior fights were only against Brunson, fringe top 10 guys like Brunson and Brad Tavares and Marvin Vettori. So I mean, this guy, that's a tough test when you really think about it. Vettori, Brad Tavares, Brunson, I mean, those guys are no slouches, man.
Yeah, those are guys that Robert Whittaker knocked out in the first round. You know what I mean? So, besides Vettori.
Those are the same guys that Rob beat on his way to the title shot. So.
I can't wait to see what happens. And, man, another cool thing is the environment that's going to be going down there because, as you know, Marvel Stadium is going to be 40,000 people. This is a soccer stadium we're talking about. This is not just an arena. When we went to State Farm Arena to see Max versus Dustin and Israel versus Kelvin, that was, 10,000 people, 15,000 people, 20 if we're being lucky. 40,000 plus people are going to be in attendance this Saturday night or Sunday if you're in Australia, Shaq.
Yeah, everybody and their mama's going to be there. So I'm sure the Australian/Kiwis are going to be fighting with a lot of emotions. I'm sure, their entire families are going to be there.
Well, we're going to break down this whole card start to finish. But before we do that, we just got to let everyone know about our newest sponsor, Flav. For all your CBD product, make sure you visit flavcbd.com, man. Man, it's so awesome to be on board with a company with a lot of like-minded individuals, and we just love their products. And the kind of stuff that Flav have, I mean, obviously you guys already know about the pens and the vapes and this and that, but what about CBD gummies? What about sunscreen? What about salve? I mean, they literally have everything you could have for any needs you might need, Shaq.
Yeah, anytime you need to unwind from a stressful day, go ahead and, you're a little sore from work or sore from for training, for whatever you're doing, go ahead and throw some of that Flavor RX on you. Baby mama's arguing and complaining, and just go ahead and eat a whole pack of gummies. So, to make you buzzed out. So Flavor RX is the way to go.
Yeah, we love Flav. Go to flavcbd.com. And also, if you're in Cali, if we ain't just talking CBD no more, if the THC is legal where you're from, go to Flav Inc. because they can do something for you there. But make sure you go where it's legal. For everywhere else, the CBD products are absolutely incredible. If you're sore from jiu-jitsu, if you're a little bit stressed out about the fights this weekend, what bets you're going to make, this is the best way to calm down, in my opinion. And it tastes amazing. I mean, when we talk about these gummies, we're talking about blueberry, we're talking about mango, cotton candy, green apple, the whole bit. So they got you covered. Make sure you go to flavinc.com, go to flavcbd.com, and let them know Half the Battle sent you. Well, Shaq, let's break down this whole card start to finish, because first up in the bantamweight division, we got Khalid Taha. He's 13-2, and Bruno Bulldog Silva is 11-3. Currently, they got Khalid Taha minus 235, and Bruno Bulldog is plus 195. Well, Shaq, Khalid Taha, he's one of these guys that if he hits you clean on the chin, chances are you might go to sleep. I would say he is one of the hardest hitting bantamweights on the roster currently. But when you're talking about a guy in Bruno Silva, he moved in with Henry Cejudo 2 years ago. He's gone under his wing, and now he feels like he's ready to make that UFC debut. Do you think he has what it takes to come out here as a 2-1 dog and defeat the very hard-hitting Khalid Taha?
Taha, he's a strong, stocky, compact, 135-pounder. Like you said, he's got the power like we saw in his last fight. If you ain't ready to go right off the bat and you stand in front of him, he might knock you unconscious like he did Boston Salmon in the ATL. I mean, that was a face-first KO. I know Boston was upset about the stoppage, but I mean, he was seeing stars.
I saw them bring out the smelling salts.
He was seeing stars, and Taha, even in his fight before that, when he was up a weight class at 145 pounds against Nadia, who I think is about 3-1 in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. So he showed he had a good showing in that fight, to be honest. I mean, yeah, he got taken down, he got held down by the much bigger guy, and that is a weakness in his game. But hey, this guy shows you that he can inflict a lot of damage with his punches. I mean, Nad's nose was leaking blood, his mouth was leaking blood, and anytime you stand in front of him, against Khalid Taha, be very careful, because his power is, like you said, probably on the upper totem pole for bantamweights, So now he's in here with Bruno Silva, a newcomer, a guy that's paid his dues. This guy suffered a vicious KO loss by a head kick in Brazil back in the day, and after that fight, like you said, he moved to AZ. He's been staying with the Fight Ready team and Henry Cejudo, Eric Albercine, and he's become one of their brothers, man. He's walking around with Henry Cejudo and Paulo Costa in Australia as we speak. So this guy is surrounded by the great people. I know you guys have known I've got nothing but good things to say about the Fight Ready Neuroforce One team. I mean, for the most part, all their fighters been looking pretty good lately. You got Patricio, he's a champ. You got Costa, Henry Cejudo, that kid Hunter Azor.
Patricky's looking better than ever.
Looking better than ever. Tracy Cortez is on her way.
Between you and me,
Close won his fight.
Bobby Muffet looked the best he ever had.
Bobby Muffet looked good. So I'm really high on that gym. Eric Albercine, the whatever strength and conditioning programs they're doing over there, it's working out. So Bruno Silva, we haven't seen him for a long time. He's been out for about over a year. So there's a good chance with all that working at Neuroforce One with the Fight Ready team that he's got a whole new, I don't say a whole new set of skills, but maybe he's just a lot more efficient than what you've seen on tape. He was kind of showing signs in the second to last fight of some new footwork that he usually doesn't use. He comes from Pitbull Brothers in Brazil, maybe he's been working with that karate coach. So I feel like there is a good chance that Bruno Silva comes a lot better than people see on tape. The thing is, he does have the habit of keeping his chin up in the air. Back in the day when he fought Casey Kinney in LFA, he was arguably up 2 rounds going into the 3rd round, and then just the repetitive habit of keeping his chin up in the air, Casey was finally able to catch him, and he was able to wobble and have a dominant 3rd round leading to a draw. So as long as Bruno's been making improvements on this, I do see this fight playing out a little closer than the line, but I gotta slightly lean Khalid Taha, because although I think Bruno's the black belt, he's got the jiu-jitsu skills, and we've seen Taha make mistakes on the mat against 23-13 jabs in which he got submitted. But I attributed that to a little bit of Ricky moves. He just it happens, man. He was whooping up on the guy. He got a little tired, and when he went to his back when he was tired, got tapped out. I've just never seen Bruno Silva implement that game plan for 3 rounds. I still think he's a little bit of a mystery in a sense. But I think, in terms of the grappling defense of Taha, look, he's been training at one of the best camps you can train at, aka to address that issue. And I think that's an issue that can definitely be resolved for a guy like this. So I'll pick Khalid Taha by a tough decision.
Man, I'm very excited for this fight. So with Khalid Taha, like we already mentioned, one of the hardest hitters at bantamweight. And now that he's training at AKA, I do expect to see some improvements. But historically speaking, what Khalid Taha has always been known for is outside the UFC, he gets taken down every single fight, and he's known for coming back and knocking the guys out. Well, in that UFC debut, granted it was at featherweight, there wasn't any getting back up and knocking the guy out. It was getting grinded out for 3 straight rounds. Even 2 fights before that UFC debut versus Otsuka in Rizin. You're not supposed to lose to a guy like Otsuka inside the distance. He was supposed to go out there and starch that guy in the first round, in my opinion, at least. So I definitely want to see more improvements from Khalid Taha on the mat, and not to mention, I think the only reason he's close to a 2.5 to 1 favorite here is because of a 20-second knockout over Boston Salmon. Look, I picked Salmon, but we said the only way Khalid Taha can win that fight is via knockout. He got it in the first 20 seconds. We have no clue what would have happened if that fight was extended. Not to mention, Boston Salmon was out there fighting with his hands down. And if you heard Boston Salmon's interviews leading up to that fight, he said that, basically even after I picked him, I heard his interview, and he's saying stuff like, I don't even care what happens in this fight. I was like, oh my God, facepalm. So, and then you got starched in 20 seconds. What do you expect? Well, you know who does care about what's going to happen? Bruno Bulldog Silva. And, we can sit here and talk about how, he lives with Henry, therefore he's a new man, this and that. And, that's all talk, that's all speculation, but the evidence I have is you watch that fight in that Brazil regional scene. Actually, let's take it back a little bit further. You watch his fights on The Ultimate Fighter. First one, you can kind of see the potential. He goes out there, breaks some dude's jaw with a front kick to the face. Next fight, he takes on a guillotine specialist who's won over 10 fights via guillotine. He gets caught by him. This is a long time ago. Goes back to the Brazilian regional scene, even had a 16-second knockout loss, a vicious one. One where if you watch that, you're like, man, this guy, there's no way in hell he'll ever make it to the UFC. Well, talk about putting your head down and grinding, because that guy that was coming off that 16-second knockout loss, he goes in there with Casey Kenny, who's undefeated in the UFC, by the way, and he goes to a draw with Casey Kenny in LFA, and I watched the fight. Even, you might score it 2-1 Casey Kenny, you might score it 2-1 Bruno Silva, but the bottom line is, Bruno Silva was out there giving Casey Kenny a run for his money, and that's got to count for something, because Casey Kenny is no slouch at all. Now, I know someone can say, well, Roman Salazar gave Casey Kenny a run for his money. You're right. Well, Otsuka gave Khalid Taha a run for his money, so I got you on that one. But look, what I really want to get at, the most important part, is the evolution of Bruno Bulldog's game, because he had that draw with Casey Kenny, and after that fight, we weren't sure if he was just kind of fizzle out and not really make it. But I'll tell you what, he moved in with Henry Cejudo, and moving in with Henry Cejudo is not the important thing. The important thing is that the influence that Henry's dropped down on him, because if you watch his next fight, which was about 7 months later, maybe even more, he comes out there with that same karate stance and footwork that Pitbull's been implementing in his game lately, that Cejudo's been implementing his last couple fights. So whatever they've been doing, Bruno's been doing the same thing. And he's training with Fight Ready, or as we like to say in Brazil, Fight Ready. So I think that Bruno Bulldog Silva is going to show something he hasn't shown yet. And if he does not get knocked out by Khalid Taha, I think he's going to be able to get this fight to the mat, use that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I know Coach Eric Albercine didn't watch the tape and tell Bruno Silva to go in there and stand and bang with Khalid Taha. If he does, then he deserves to lose. But if he's smart like I think he is, and he's got the Triple C with him and captain, and they got a good game plan, I think they're going to mix it up. I think they're going to take this guy down the mat, and I think they're going to grind it out. So I'm going to go with Bruno Bulldog for the upset. Next up in the flyweight division, we got Nadia Kassem. She's 5-1, and Yeon Kim is 8-2. Currently, they got Yeon Kim minus 210. The comeback on Nadia Kassem is plus 175. Well, one thing I want to say is this line opened minus 140 Nadia Kassem. It didn't just flip, Shaq. It's minus 210 Yeon Kim. So people think Nadia Kassem is one of the worst fighters on the roster. Now, that's debatable. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. What I want to know here is, What do you think about this line flip, and which side are you taking?
For the two fights that Nadia's been in, I actually bet on her in her debut against,
Astro Girl?
the Astro girl, Alex Chambers, who's a complete soccer mom, and my God, she gave me a scare. I mean, all Nadia's shown in these two fights is that she hasn't been ready for UFC competition, and I mean, she was lucky that she was in. Luckily, she was in there with a 37-year-old scientist, and you know.
Astrophysicist.
Luckily, she was in there with a 37-year-old astrophysicist, and she was able to get through it. But then her fight against Montana De La Rosa, who I know she's got a winning record, but the fact that the fight went down that way, it was so dominant. I mean, their ground game looked completely atrocious. And in between those fights, she was supposed to fight Yeon Zhao, and
could you imagine?
Before that fight, man, people were sending me some things of what Nadia was doing outside of the octagon.
Yeah.
And, I was like, man,
forgot about that.
This girl is completely off the deep end. She's I'm not going to get into details, but she kind of completely went off the deep end in between those fights. In a fight where she missed weight in the debut at 115, now she's up at 125. But then she comes back for the De La Rosa fight. She's telling the media about all these problems she's been having. And then she goes out there and gets ran through. So now she's coming back. I think it's been, a year or so? Maybe less than a year. She is a very young girl. I think she's not even 23 maybe. She's very young. She's training at Australian top team with her ex-boyfriend Suman, and let's see the improvement she's got. The only thing I see is a left straight and a left kick, but even that is just borderline average. But I will give her the benefit that she is young. She might... it seems like, following her on Instagram, that she's taking this fight a little bit more seriously. She says this is the actual first real training camp that she's ever had. Gone through the whole process. So we'll see.
She's not doing the whole bit again?
She's not doing the whole bit again. So now she's in here against Jeon Kim, who's an average fighter at best. Jeon Kim, she has been in there with the Pudilovas, the Shevchenkos. She beat Justine Kish. She beat Melinda Fabian. She's a 500 fighter, and that's what she's going to be, either one below or right at 500. I think she's a pro boxer down there in South Korea, so I would give her the hands edge for sure in this fight. But, Jeon Kim is just one of those fighters where it's very easy for her to start fighting close with somebody. For example, the Melinda Fabian fight. Melinda Fabian was a complete joke. I mean, Melinda Fabian got ran through by Ostovich, who, if I'm not mistaken, might have a losing record.
Does have a losing record.
Who might have
And real quick on Melinda Fabian, you guys need to watch her regional fights.
I mean, it's just bad. I mean, look, I actually did bet on Kim in that fight, but it was minus 190, but the fight went to split decision. She won the first 2 rounds, but in the third round, it just seemed like she got tied up, or she just really wasn't trying. Then she comes back against Shevchenko, misses weight by 5 pounds, and loses a 30-27. Now, Nadia Kassem probably below than all those girls, but who knows? She's young. Who knows? Kim at minus 210, I would not play it if you got it, at dog odds or pick 'em odds, and I think you might got some value, because I do think she's got more skill. She's got, she's shown that she can at least beat Justine Kish or go somewhat close with the bantamweights like Pudilova and not get finished by Shevchenko. Whereas I know you put Nadia in those fights and it's gonna be. I mean, Montana De La Rosa literally ran this girl through the gave this girl a tour of the octagon, you know what I'm saying? And so I got to go with Jeon Kim, but from a betting perspective, this is just a pass fight for me. I don't see any value on any side. We can sit here and say, oh, Kassim's at home in Australia, and I guess that would be the side if you had to take, but she has shown nothing skill-wise that leads me to believe that she can compete at this level, so I'll go with Jeon Kim.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shaq broke it down well in terms of the style, so I don't really think I need to address anything there. I mean, one thing I do want to say is, do you remember that clip of my girl Lima McFarland, the Bellator women's champion, when she was on the regional scene and she beat up that cafeteria lady?
What Nadia was doing.
That's what Nadia was doing on her regional scene. One spinning back fist and these girls would go home, So, as far as this matchup is concerned, here's what I got to say, because a lot of smart people that I know are saying that Jeon Kim is easy money, and you guys might be right, but here's my thing. Just hear me out on this. I said those exact same words when she fought Melinda Fabian. And yes, she went out there and won. Melinda Fabian's on the exact same level, in my opinion, as Nadia Kassem. Maybe a little bit older. It's just not UFC caliber, right? So you're thinking this is easy money, and then Jeon Kim fights the level of her competition and goes to a split decision. So it's one of those things, man. Don't be surprised if that happens again here, is all I'm saying. But at the end of the day, I do think Jeon Kim is more advanced in her career at this point, so I'll pick her for that reason. Next up in the featherweight division, we got Megan Anderson. She's 8-4, and Zarah Fairn dos Santos is 6-2. Currently, they got Megan Anderson minus 600. The comeback on Zarah Fairn dos Santos is plus 450. Well, Shaq, I'm going to take a wild guess that you weren't one of the people running to the betting window to lay 6-1 on Megan Anderson.
Megan's pulling so much stunts out there that they had to go find a French girl for her to fight in Australia. So, Megan Anderson, man, look, her last fight I kind of got, before her last fight I don't want to say go in on her, but I've just been questioning her mental state. From these interviews I've been watching, the vibe I'm getting is that the girl is not barely hanging on, but just in the mental, you could just see there's that mind is racing, and when she gets put in a bad spot in that cage, she's been finishing. But now, like you said that she's 6-1. For the ones that are out there parlaying that 6-1, just remember, like I told you guys last time, this is a lady that got finished by Cindy Dandois. So just beat her.
And real quick, and on that note, Shaq, was the Cindy Dandois fight a fluke finish or was it a domination?
Oh no, it was an ass beating from bell to bell. I mean, Cindy Dandois handled her with ease. I mean, mounted her, mollywopped her, whatever you want to call it. So, and not to mention, I've seen Megan get wobbled by 1-on-1 bums before, like vicious chicken dances.
Amber Leibrock or whatever.
Yeah, Amber Leibrock. And all the other girls she beat in Invicta were complete cans, like Peggy Morgan and Charmaine Tweet, a chick that looks like a dodo bird. So Megan Anderson came into the UFC untested, and it's mind-boggling that people just keep laying chalk on her. Like, it's huge and she's big, but that size, you guys aren't realizing one thing is that Megan's cutting a serious ton of weight, and I feel like it's taken away from her performances in the cage. It's leading her to pull some of the most epic stunts that you have seen in a while. It's one thing to say that, oh, we lost to Holly Holm and we're a little bit green, but when Holly Holm puts a jiu-jitsu clinic on, Holly Holm, the boxing world champion,
the person with no jiu-jitsu,
puts a jiu-jitsu clinic on you and is full mounting you and is literally out here running you through Holly Holm is out here going for guillotines on you. And we can sit here and say, but Holly Holm's 100 in her last, in her last few fights. But anyways, Megan cutting too much weight. If you pull up some of her weigh-in videos, I mean, anytime she's making steps, she's wincing, and that's not good signs. That's like what Aspen was looking like before she fought Jermaine Duranamy. And now it's all starting to make sense to me as why Megan isn't living up to expectations. But even with the weight cut, is she even that good? I know she's big and she's 6 foot, and not too many girls are gonna be 6 foot. She's got big muscles. But, she's going to be sick again after this weight cut. I mean, I don't see why the weight cut would get better. I mean, she's just too big. I mean, she's bigger than Calvin Kattar, in my opinion. She's bigger than Cerrone, in my opinion. She's bigger than a lot of featherweights out there, and even some lightweights. You know what I'm saying? Like, this girl fighting at 145 pounds isn't right. She should be fighting in PFL in that 155 division. And then, who knows, maybe she would live up to the hype. But, she's got nowhere to go. But luckily for her, I don't even say luckily, Dos Santos is just a mystery. Dos Santos just seems like a striker that likes to use her jab and straight punches, and she's been whooping up on these girls. She lost a couple decisions. She's never been finished. Megan's, I don't think she's ever won a decision. I think all her wins are by finish. So if this fight gets extended, this probably leads me to believe that this fight's going to start playing out a little bit closer. Although Megan has fought considerably the higher level of competition, I would not be shocked in the slightest if she pulled another stunt. Felicia Spencer, although it's probably on a different level than this Dos Santos girl and Holly Holm, gets more so Megan beating herself either before she gets in there or with the weight cut. So, I'll pick Megan to win just because this girl Dos Santos hasn't fought anything on this level, but as a betting perspective, it's Dos Santos or past. Megan Anderson is flaky. She's been wobbled by 1-on-1 girl. She's beaten absolutely nobody. I guess if you want to count Kat Zingano. But
she counts that as a real win.
You know what I'm saying? So, and Kat Zingano's absolutely washed up. I mean,
to a point.
And so I'll pick Megan just because she's the more experienced fighter, and it just seems like trending wise, whenever people are over in the UFC and they get the newcomer, that maybe they get the win, and they are trying to set her up with a win. I mean, they're trying to get her a win here. It's just when after this weight cut and after she's out here on the scales with the tube and she looks absolutely drawn out, who knows what to say she's going to do. I mean, just watch this girl's fights. It's kind of a mess. She rushes everything. I mean, unless she moves up a weight class, I really don't see this ending too well for Megan. but I'll pick her to get the win on Saturday.
Yeah, look, Megan Anderson, I think Shaq said it right. Those weight cuts take out so much from her. She should not be weighing 145 pounds. It's just that, well, there's no option. If you want to fight in the UFC, you better fucking make 145 pounds. It literally takes everything out of her. And a lot of people are under the impression that Cindy Dandois fight, that Megan was dominating, then she just got caught with a fluke submission. And that wasn't the case at all. Cindy Dandois picked up Megan Anderson and threw her out the cage. You know what I mean? She gave her a tour, a first class one at that, VIP access. You got to skip the entire line. It was one of those tours, and it was quite embarrassing and alarming. And then in subsequent fights, she's getting rocked by these girls with losing records. So the thing I do like about Megan Anderson, and there's only one thing, it's the offensive striking. Not that it's pretty or nothing like that, but at least she's violent. She's out there mixing it up. Art of 8 limbs, punches, kicks, knees, elbows, I respect that. But defensively, chin straight up in the air, doesn't move that head off the center line, and that's just striking. Let's talk about defensively in the grappling realm. Oh, man. I mean, you put this girl on her back and make her work, and, she's going to start making the facial expressions. If you watch that Felicia Spencer fight, just take a look at my boy James Krause and the rest of the corner, man. As soon as that fight hit the mat, they're all face-palming. They're all like, oh, my God, like, we've been in this position all camp, and now you know what I mean? And now you're giving up, so.
We worked on this every day.
Like, we worked on this every day, Megan. What the fuck, So, as far as Zarah Fairn dos Santos goes, she's a striker, so it's going to give Megan the kind of fight she wants. Word on the street is that this chick dos Santos, so she's from the French regional scene. Apparently she couldn't get any fights. No one wanted to fight her, so she's coming off a bit of a layoff. And in her last loss to Sinead Kavanagh, Sinead's an SBG fighter. She had the New York Times best-selling author John Kavanagh in the corner. They fixed the decision real quick, but if you go watch that fight and go look at the YouTube comments, everyone knows dos Santos won that fight, but it's one of those things, you can't fight close in someone else's hometown or even home country. Well, this happens to be in Megan Anderson's home, so if it is close, I'm going to lean Anderson. But the thing is, man, if you're asking me to pick a side between a minus 600 next to Megan's name and a plus 450 with someone else who's not Peggy Morgan, I'm going to lean with the plus 450, bro. So I'm going to go with Zarah Fairn dos Santos to get this upset. Next up in the lightweight division, we got Brad Riddell. He's 6-1, and Jamie Mullarkey is 12-2. Currently, they got Brad Riddell minus 160. The comeback on Jamie Mullarkey is plus 140. Well, Shaq, this fight opened to pick him with a slight lean on Riddell, but all the action has come in on Riddell, and now he's a decent-sized favorite. And what's really interesting about this fight is I know people have heard us break down a Jamie Mullarkey fight before, because whenever we break down Alex Volkanovski, I always mention that vicious stiffening on the regional scene he had, and that was against Jamie Mullarkey. He floored Jamie Mullarkey, and I thought Jamie Mullarkey was never going to be able to recover, was never going to be able to make it to a UFC fight. I thought he was going to be what we like to refer to as terminally local. And turns out that's not the case. This kid put his head down, he grinded, he got on a win streak, he got the wins he needed to get on the Australian scene, and now he's making that UFC debut against Brad Riddell. And when you talk about Brad Riddell, you're talking about a guy who's got a serious kickboxing background. And when I mean serious, I mean this guy went out there and beat John Wayne Parr. And officially it says he beat him by decision, but if you go and you watch that fight, between you and me, he won by knockout. And he knocked him out like 3 times. One of the times he face planted him, but with those kickboxing rules, they get these 10 counts and all these things. So the guy came back from the dead, but Brad Riddell slept him. And also, for being 6-1, Brad Riddell also has a knockout win over Keenan Song, who's out here in the welterweight division with a winning record in the UFC. So he does have some experience in that extent, in that regard. But one thing I gotta say, man, besides Keenan Song, who is a kickboxer and will give Brad Riddell the fight he wants, all these other guys he's been fighting are nowhere near the caliber of not just Jamie Mullarkey, but UFC caliber. I mean, we're talking about earlier this year, guys, 2019. Brad Riddell is out here wearing rash guards, fighting 1-2 guys. What I mean by 1-2, 1 win, 2 losses. That's the record of the guy he was fighting in China. They're wearing rash guards out there. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is some Bush League stuff. So while Brad Riddell is this amazing kickboxer, very thickly muscled, this guy's hooks are on point. He goes to your body, you might take a knee. He goes upstairs, they might need to bring in the stretcher and the smelling salts. But the thing is, if you can extend this guy, if you can make him start to breathe heavy, you can take him down to the mat. I have a feeling, I have a slight suspicion that he doesn't know what the hell he's doing on that mat. I know he's out here training with Dan Hooker and Izzy and Volk and all these guys. He even has inside info on Mullarkey because he is Volk's striking coach. Volk did knock out Mullarkey, but Volk isn't going to go in there and fight for him. Alexander Volkanovski, what's his record? 18-1, 19-1. He's fighting for a world title, guys. Brad Riddell is 6-1. I'm not even convinced he should be making that UFC debut yet. The only thing here is that Jamie Mullarkey needs to get past the stand-up portion, at least while Brad Riddell is fresh. But one thing I love about this kid Mullarkey, look, he's not the most athletic in the world. He definitely marks up when he gets hit. He's very hittable. He's been knocked out before. But the kid has serious cardio. He's got heart for days. And if you start to slow down on a guy like Jamie Mullarkey, he will tee off on you. He starts mixing it up to the body. He'll start mixing in takedowns. And when he gets on top, man, he'll land some devastating elbows. I've seen him knock dudes' teeth out with elbows from ground and pound. So bottom line is, I think that if he does not go down to the left hook of Brad Riddell, that he's gonna start to put it on him late, go out there and win this decision, potentially get a submission. I'm not sold on Brad Riddell's ground game. The only thing I think Brad Riddell brings to the table is he hits extremely hard. He's got a high level striking pedigree. But guys, that's a different sport. This is MMA. It takes time to transition from kickboxing to MMA. Israel Adesanya didn't get to the UFC, on his 7th pro fight. It took him a little bit longer than that. And you saw shit on that regional scene where guys like Melvin Guillard were taking Israel Adesanya's back. Like, even though Riddell's got all this potential, you still got to pay your dues before you're ready to perform in that octagon. And I do think Jamie Mullarkey has paid his dues. So for that reason, I think he comes out here, weathers the storm, and gets the upset in his first UFC appearance.
Hit it on the head. I mean, Riddell's definitely got the reputation of the serious striker. Like you said, he's knocked out John Wayne Parr. He's, fought around the world in kickboxing. He's still relatively young, 28, but I'd say he's an older 28. He's coming in with the kickboxing extensive career in that sport. And like you said, he doesn't know what to. You feel like there's a chance he doesn't know what to do on the mat. Well, in just in July 2018, he did get submitted by a guy that Mullarkey beat, Abel Brights, and he tapped right away, with an armbar. He took him down, and it was nothing.
And these guys got to know what kind of level Abel Brights is on.
I mean, he tapped right away, so there is a good chance he doesn't know what to do on the mat. It's been some time. I'm sure he knows a little bit more, but does he know a little bit more when the bright lights is on him under that UFC octagon and Eugene isn't standing right over him telling him what to do, you know what I'm saying?
2-on-1, Brad.
When he's on the other side of the cage and he can't really hear.
When you can pause the session mid-sub and say, no, put the hands here.
So that's my big question. He's got the vicious body work. We've seen him hurt a lot of guys to the body, and Mullarkey does have a skinny core. He does have a skinny frame, so it would not shock me if the power was just too much. But like you said, Mullarkey is a really tested fighter. He's actually fought the better lightweights on that Australian scene. He's actually paid his dues. Oh, he got knocked out by Volkanovski, who's the number 2 45er in the world. Big fucking whoop. He was at like 22 when that happened. You know what I'm saying? And he's paid his dues, and he's bounced back. And then, like you said, I like the kid's work rate. I like how he's steady yet. He doesn't really get deterred. He just moves forward. If you hit him, he keeps moving forward. He's got the better ground game for sure. He's more efficient in my opinion. The kid's only 25. He's also getting very better. He's already more well-rounded than Riddell. I mean, that's just facts. And Riddell, like you said, he's been fighting in these rash guards against these 1 and 2, what I like to call chaps with tennis shoes on, and with rash guards and shit, and he's out here, handling them. But even that, I mean, it's not necessarily so impressive. It's really not even fights. They're more like exhibition matches up until Riddell touches them and they go down. So Riddell, besides the Keenan Song fight, in which he landed a beautiful body shot, really hasn't been consistently tested inside an octagon in comparison to Jamie Mullarkey. So Jamie Mullarkey's got the far better cardio. Not to mention Brad Riddell, he keeps mentioning this weight cut to 55. He has fought at 55 in the past and he is a lightweight, but he just hasn't fought at that weight in a little while.
And this 3-week notice.
And this is a 3-week notice fight. I feel like Mullarkey's one of those guys that he just strikes me as that guy that's always in striking distance of weight, a very hard worker. And I feel like Riddell might drain himself to make this weight, and he's very muscular, and he's going to be hitting, swinging heat early. And Mullarkey's got to be careful. But like you said, if this fight gets extended, I actually favor Mullarkey. I feel like he's more alive than not in this spot. Last week there was a good example of a kickboxer who fought bum competition like Giga Chikadze. He was out here fighting 2-32 guys and in that promotion Gladiator challenge, and he came with great improvements. But you know what? It took him to make those improvements an embarrassing loss to a bum named Austin Springer. And although Riddell's took him one of those losses, I feel like he might have to take another one to really make those strides in his grappling game. And I just feel like there's some big question marks on him. So I understand if his kickboxing background is enough to take him for someone to take over a guy like Mullarkey, but I feel like this might be a closer fight now, and I'll take Mullarkey for an upset by third round submission.
Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got Callen, the Rockstar Potter. He's 17-8, and Maki Coconut Bombs Pitolo is 12-4. First of all, Callen, my boy Jamar, the Rockstar Whitehead, might have an issue with that nickname, but currently they got Maki Pitolo minus 350. The comeback on Callen Potter is plus 290. Well, Shaq, I mean, we kind of know the deal here. Basically, everyone thinks that Maki Pitolo is going to knock out Callen Potter in the first round. There's a very good chance that could happen. The only, kind of wrench I want to throw in there is that I've seen Maki Pitolo go out there and absolutely mop the floor with guys and dominate them to a point where it's like, Maki, do whatever you want to do. If you want to light the guy on fire, if you want to throw him out the cage, if you want to do all these things, and he'll have a guy dead to rights, and then out of nowhere, he gets finished. And this isn't a one-time thing. This isn't a two-time thing. I've seen this on three separate occasions where Maki Pitolo is dominating a fight pillar to post. Seems like there's no way he can lose, and then he gets finished out of nowhere. So that's where I have hesitation laying minus 3.5 on a guy like Maki Pitolo. But that being said, when you talk about Callen Potter, I kind of think he got to the UFC a little bit too late. People were hyping him up from the Australian scene a couple years back. They thought he maybe should have got in then. But after that Marcin Held fight where he got heel hooked, he's been looking significantly slower. You saw that BJ Bland fight where, you're not supposed to go to a split decision with a guy like BJ Bland. You're supposed to finish him in the first round. And since that point, then Jalen Turner, who, is low tier UFC caliber fighter, is out there finishing him in under 2 minutes. So I think that even though I respect Callen Potter a lot, he seems like a really nice guy. I like the people he trains with. I think he might have got to the UFC a little bit too late. So I'm gonna pick Maki Pitolo to come out here and get a first round knockout. But again, with this minus 350, guys, I'm gonna repeat myself. I've seen Maki Pitolo dominate people and then get finished out of nowhere more than once. So tread with caution, but my pick is Maki Pitolo via first round knockout.
Maki Pitolo, he had the stretch of 2 losses to Cassius Clay and Dakota Cochran. The first one to Cassius Clay, in which he got knocked out viciously. I'd attribute that to just poor management. It's kind of like what I said about Jeff Hughes and Maurice Green a couple weeks back. He literally just beat him the fight before, and then he took another fight with him. You know what I'm saying? It's like, bro, you just fought him. Why would you fight him again? And then he got knocked out, and we consider and saying it's kind of hard to. He dominated the guy for a round. You know what I'm saying?
He beat the fuck out of him.
He took him down for a round, but I can't necessarily call that domination. 1 round isn't enough to consider domination. I mean, we see that. We see that over and over. I just saw it last week. So, I feel like Maki Pitolo, he's coming in here. The kid's one of those typical Hawaii warriors, man. He's going to fight with his heart. He's here to either get knocked out or get a knockout. So, you saw his last fight against Justin Sumter. He put the pressure on that kid. I mean, that was the best he ever looked. He put the pressure on that kid right away, went to his body. But the thing about Maki Pitolo is he's a killer, be killed fighter. That comes with a cost. That means he's prone to a possible fluke KO. And Potter, he's pulled off a couple fluke KOs in the past, but like you said, in the last few years, it just seems like he's getting progressively a lot more chinny, especially in these last 4 or 5 fights where he's got these knee braces on in the fights. And Maki Pitolo, like you're saying, he was dominating this and that. But look at the guy Callen Potter fought before this, Jalen Turner. Jalen Turner, on his local scene, this guy got knocked unconscious multiple, like 3 or 4 I'm talking by bums, like guys with losing records. And that Jalen Turner ran over at Callen Potter with the first left on the chin, and he was out unconscious. So, like you said, I think Firstly, he shouldn't even be in the UFC. He's here off a short notice call, and he's only going to fight on Australian cards because no one gives a shit about him anywhere else. So, I think Maki Pitolo comes out here, gets the first round knockout. Whatever you think about Maki, it's true or not, it might play out in the future, but in this particular spot, I don't think it's going to matter. I think this guy's chin is completely shot, and I think he's a fake black belt as well. I think Maki can beat him on the mat as well, so I'll take Maki.
Next up in the welterweight division, we got Jake Matthews. He's 14-4, and Rostem Akhman is 6-1. Currently, they got Jake Matthews minus 350. The comeback on Rostem Akhman is plus 290. So, Jake Matthews is an interesting character. He's had mixed results in Australia. You obviously know he got finished by James Vick, got finished by Tony Martin, lost the split to Andrew Holbrook, all in Australia. But he's also had some triumphs there too. So my question is, do you think that the walking Sasquatch Rostem Akhman is gonna punk out Jake Matthews with all that hair? I heard he hasn't been hitting I heard he ain't been hitting the waxing salon for this fight.
Rostem Akhman had a very good fight against Condasco in his debut, who was supposed to fight Michel Pereira, and they put on a good show. Rostem Akhman, he's very green. He's only got 7 fights, and it's kind of hard to ask guys with only 7 fights, kind of like a Hauchin a few weeks back. It's kind of hard to ask him to fight a 27-5 guy on 1 week notice, and then to turn back around and fight a guy like Jake Matthews in Australia, who's got the experience that he has now. Jake Matthews, for me, has always been a flake. I would never personally bet him at a line like this. He did run through Shinsho Anzai when he was lying in a similar range like this, but Rostem Akhman, although he's green, one thing I like about him is his toughness, and I like the way he moves forward. And Jake Matthews once lost to Andrew Holbrook, so nothing would surprise me, but at one point he did beat Li Jingliang. So, so this kid is literally all over the place. I'll pick Jake Matthews here just because he's at home. It seems like he's got a kid now, so he seems like this might be a perfect recipe for him to be on the cage in front of his fellow Aussies. And like I said, it's tough to ask a kid with only 7 fights already who fought a 27-5 guy to turn back around and fight Jake Matthews. So I'll pick Jake, but I would not be shocked if this fight played out closer. And that's just due to the mental side of Jake. We've seen Jake anytime if he's expecting to come out here and get a quick knockout and he doesn't get it. We've seen him in the past turn into a complete and start ankle diving, like whether it be against Bojan Velichkovic or whether it be against like the Andrew Holbrook fight, or we've seen him in times like in his Tony Martin fight. It was Tony Rocco Martin, so that's a completely different level fighter than Rostem Akhman, but he quit. So there's a fundamental issue in Jake Matthews, but he's getting older. He's still a young kid. Maybe he goes on another little 2-3 fight win streak, but I'll pick Jake Matthews, but I'd be very careful.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's so much better than this guy. It's just about not getting punked out by a Sasquatch. You know what I'm saying? We're not talking about a little chest hair here with my boy Rostem. We're talking about the full back. We're talking about the shoulder. So when Jake goes to tie up with him, he better not be like, yo, what the fuck, So, no, but real talk, I just think that he's on a completely different level than Rostem Akhman, and the athleticism, the experience should carry him through here, but like we've already seen, Andrew Holbrook beat this guy, and he has had so many shaky moments in the past that minus 350 just ain't the move in this spot, but I'm still going to pick him to win. Next up in the heavyweight division, we got Yorgan de Castro. He's 5-0, and Justin Tafa is 3-0. Currently, they got Justin Tafa minus 125. The comeback on Yorgan de Castro is plus 105. Well, Shaq, it originally opened minus 170, Yorgan de Castro. I think more people know him from Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series. Went out there with a beautiful knockout over Alton Meeks, who you and I actually called Alton Meeks' last fight in the NFC. Then he went out there in Contender Series, and Yorgan de Castro leg kick TKO'd him. And with Justin Tafa, he's only 3-0 making that UFC debut, but the kid trains with Mark Hunt, Tai Tuivasa. He's got the exact same tattoos as Mark Hunt, Tai Tuivasa, Tyson Pedro, all those guys. You can assume that this kid throws big bombs. My question is, who gets it done in their UFC debut?
Justin Tafa, he's only got 3 fights. I mean, this guy is the definition of green, and in all 3 of those fights, at one point he was held down on his back, and he either fought a complete can middleweight, one of those fights in which the size was just so the middleweight was so outsized. Tafa could literally pull any stun he wanted and get out of it, and he was able to just dominate. And the other two guys he fought were complete cans. So Tafa's got a lot of questions. I get that he comes from a family of kickboxers. Dada and uncle ain't gonna hop in there and fight for big bro ain't gonna hop in there
Auntie
and fight for auntie ain't stepping in there. So.
Grandma,
Dad ain't stepping in there for you. So now he's fighting Castro, who was a huge underdog, not Alton Meeks. And the minus 170 line's a little bit intriguing because for him to be such a big dog, even to Alton Meeks, who I've seen him fight once or twice, but man, I guess that's stemming from that Yorgan kind of had a sketchy amateur record, where he had a losing amateur record, and it seems like he's gotten his shit together the second he went pro and throws those vicious low kicks. His fight against Meeks for a heavyweight guy, this guy's an underrated athlete. I mean, this guy was out here timing flying knees at 253 pounds, and that leg kick, man, his leg kick game is very vicious. It's going to be interesting to see if he can get off on those against a southpaw like Tafa. The edge I'd give Tafa is it seems like when he lets his hands go that he's definitely got better hands than Castro. But everything else, I mean, I kind of have to give it to Castro just because he's fought actual, I don't want to say real guys, but it just seems like he's a little farther along. He's a little bit more polished. He's got a little bit more seasoning. This guy's fought absolutely nobody, Tafa. So just because he's got the tattoos don't mean shit. But it's a slight pick him with the lean on Tafa now. Castro should be the favorite here. He's got the kicks, and he's just, I feel like when in this fight in the UFC, when the little details come up, that Tafa might not be able to not be good in those positions. And like I said, I've seen middleweights on top of this guy. I feel like if Castro wants to switch it up here, he can and go jiu-jitsu against this guy, and he can get the win. And I feel like Tafa, his fights just really, they're all set up for him to win. And you could say the same thing for this one, but I feel like Castro's got a country behind him. He comes from a very small country. He's a hard worker. He's got a lot of pride. And I think that he's just, right now, as of currently, the better fighter. Tafa might translate better down the line when he gets better at wrestling and the little details. But as of currently, I think Yorgan Castro should be the favorite, and I think that he gets the win. I can't necessarily say about how. I guess I'll say knockout. But this guy Tafa, I mean, look, one of his fights, they only got the second round up on YouTube. He's so sketch. They don't even want you to see the fucking first round because they know that he was on his back again. You know what I'm saying? So this guy is sketch to me. I get it. He's got the tattoos and he looks like, but guys, just because let's not forget Mark Hunt had a losing record in
MMA. let's not forget Mark Hunt went on a 6-fight losing streak.
Just because he's boys with Mark Hunt lost more fights than he won. Tyson Pedro, he's got the tattoos too. He's a fraud. Just because he's got the tattoos doesn't necessarily mean that he's you want to be I guess Mark Hunt made a lot of money, but Mark Hunt lost more fights than he won. So I'll go with Castro.
Yeah, the thing with this guy Justin Tafa is that when you talk about the people that he wants to be like, the Mark Hunts, the Tuivasas, they've all had 20 to 30 pro fights around there. This kid's on his 4th pro fight. Like, let the guy have a little seasoning and experience, because when you watch his pro career, that debut against the middleweight, and I mean, he's getting full mounted by this middleweight. He's getting taken down with ease. It's just he's so much bigger than the guy that when he finally got on top, of course he pounded him out. But when you're getting reversed by middleweights, I already know what level your ground game is on. When you're a heavyweight, my friends, this guy weighs 265 pounds. He's out here getting reversed by middleweights and taken down with ease. Next fight just ran through some random, real quick. And then the fight after that, I mean, they had to take down the first round off YouTube because they didn't want anyone to see what happened. I had to get fans to send me pictures of what happened, and the pictures I saw were Tafa on his back with that with that guy on top of him, that guy that has retired since, Shaq. So that doesn't really incite much confidence. Whereas with a guy like Yorgan Castro, when you hear this guy's story, I mean, and we're not trying to get emotional or this or that. It just kind of lets you know the kind of hard work and the kind of mindset this guy has. He came from a very small African country, moved to the United States to create a better life for his family, and he started fighting then in the States. So he had a pretty shitty amateur record, because when you look at a guy like Marlon Chito Vera, it's a kind of similar situation. They're not from the same country, but they had no one to train with in their home countries. So when they came to the States, they had so much there was so much room to improve, and Holy shit. Ricardo Ramos versus Garagori just got announced. That should be a good fight. But look, these kids, there was so much room for improvement that they had to fill all those gaps. And Marlon Chito Vera, when he moved to the United States, he went out there and filled those gaps. And I think a guy like Yorgan de Castro, when you watch his amateur fights and you compare it to his pro career, even every single pro fight in order, the guy has been putting in the work. He has been making improvements. He is surrounded by the right people. And that being said, let's talk about what he does bring to the table. The guy kicks like a goddamn mule, Shaq. The guy kicks super fucking hard. I mean, to go out there and beat the D1 football player and I think he was a national champ wrestler, something along those lines, to beat him via leg kicks, that says something. You could hear the sound. It was like a baseball bat to the thigh. And then the fight before that, where he looked a little bit sloppier, but he did land about 30 leg kicks on the guy. The reason I think he's gotten better is because it only took a couple the next fight, whereas before it was 30 in a row. So he's getting more accurate. He's throwing them harder. And also, if this kid gets on top of you, he might pound you out. Whereas with Justin Tafa, what he's got going for him is he's got that Mark Hunt and Tai Tuivasa boxing style. His hands are on point. The guy can throw hands, but the rest of the game just ain't together, man. You put this guy on his back, he better hope that you don't that you don't finish him and that the bell rings so he can start the next round on the feet, because he ain't getting back up. So while the leg kicks might not be as big of a factor because Tafa is a southpaw, it might be a little bit tougher to do. I mean, I still think Yorgan de Castro can go inside on the leg kick. I still think he can go to the body kick. I still think, actually, he's low-key a pretty damn athletic heavyweight, even though he doesn't look it. The guy was out here timing flying knees the last fight. I wouldn't be surprised if he went upstairs with a head kick, but he's got Tyson Chartier with him, who's Calvin Cater's manager. They game plan all this stuff. They better know to take Tafa down to the mat where the guy has nothing off his back. So I'm going to go with Yorgan de Castro here to get the win in his UFC debut. And I also want to say, you guys should hear this kid talk because he's very, very smart, very analytical. I'm very impressed with this guy, so I can't wait to see what he does. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got Luke Jumeau. He's 13-4, and Dhiego Lima is 14-7. Currently, they got Dhiego Lima minus 145. The comeback on Luke Jumeau is plus 125. Well, Shaq, Dhiego Lima opened minus 230 here. All the action has come in on the Kiwi, Luke Jumeau. And Luke Jumeau's coming off a 2-year layoff, and Dhiego Lima, talk about a career turnaround, man. At one point, he was the laughing stock of the welterweight division. Now he's coming off back-to-back wins over Ultimate Fighter winners, looking finally starting to live up to that potential, because originally it was like, Douglas's little bro. Now it's Dhiego Lima. So you think Dhiego Lima's going to come out here and beat the Kiwi in Australia?
Luke Jumeau, he was actually supposed to fight Jeff Neal in Australia, and then
I wonder why he pulled out of that fight.
and he got injured, and we haven't seen him since. So.
Did you ever hear what the injury was?
I haven't. So he's supposed to fight Jeff Neal. We haven't seen him since. And before that, he was coming off the win against Daichi IB. Daichi's a very young kid, and he actually dropped Luke Jumeau badly in the first round and hurt him. And then he just pulled a young move, got tired, and lost the next 2 rounds. And Luke Jumeau kind of has what I like to call a wannabe Robert Whittaker style. He's got similar tattoos. He likes to fight with his left hand down, and he likes to invite you in to try to knock him out so he can counter you and slip and try to land a left hook or a big combo upstairs. And that's I would say that would be the strength in his game, his power. He's an undersized welterweight. I mean, it's sad because he can't make 55, and it just seems like he's a little bit too undersized to go toe to toe with the Jeff Neals of the world. And Dhiego Lima is a very big boy. I mean, he's about the same size as Douglas Lima, so he's definitely going to be outsized in this fight. And I actually agree with the opening line. Dhiego Lima, the issue with him has always been his chin. We know he's got the skills. We know he's got the black belt. We know that he's got the power. We know he's got the explosion. He's got the boxing. It's always been the chin, or just his mental. There was such a long period of time there when the guy had absolutely no confidence at all, where him going into these fights was pretty much just whatever happens. And these last 2 fights, man, he just in the last couple of years in general overall, it just seems like he's making gains. In his fight against Chad Lepre, man, his movement was on point. Chad tried to low-key punk him out with a bunch of feints and fakes, and Dhiego was able to stand in that pocket, land a vicious left hook. Kind of reminds me of his big bro, that left hook. And he knocked Chad Lepre the fuck out in his next fight against a hard worker like Court McGee, a guy who doesn't stop. And, Court might be washed up or old, this and that, but one thing about Cordes. He will push a pace and he will move forward the entire time. And Dhiego was able to move around the entire time for 15 minutes, or for 14 minutes and 40 seconds, and was able to pick him apart, in my opinion. He took him down, stuffed his takedowns, and it was the best he ever looked. I actually thought that was his best performance. And what the issue was, in the last 15 seconds, he got carried away. He swung, closed his eyes, and he got dropped. So we do know that the chin, I don't want to say it's a chin issue, but I'll just say it's a focus issue. As long as he is focused on his task, I think Diego's the better fighter than Luke Jumeau. Luke Jumeau had a shitty performance, in my opinion, against Shinzo Anzai, a fight where he was supposed to walk, or supposed to run through Shit Show Anzai. I mean, if you look at the fight before and his fight after, what happened to Shit Show Anzai? He got ran through, you know what I'm saying? But when he fought Luke Jumeau with that style, the hands down, and he, like I said, he likes to try to invite you in so he can counter. It's a very kind of lazy type of fighting style. And sometimes Luke's got his hands down and he gets caught with shots that he shouldn't be getting hit with, and it's hard for him to win rounds that way. So I feel like Dhiego Lima, as long as he comes out here, uses his movement, the key to this fight, really, in my opinion, is taking Luke Jumeau down. I feel like Dhiego is considerably better than him on the mat. The only chance I give Luke Jumeau to win this fight is by knockout. And I feel like if he can't win by knockout, he's going to get severely outclassed. And I'm going to go with Dhiego Lima for a 30-27 win. You know, I feel like he's just going to not give him a tour, but just give him a slight MMA lesson, a jiu-jitsu lesson, a wrestling lesson, even a boxing lesson, you know? I feel like as long as he picks those shots right, they had a very, very specific training camp. I mean, the Luke Jumeau replica in camp for Dhiego Lima was Tony Martin, who's a better better grappler, better boxer, better everything. And he trained with Dhiego and his brother, you know, specifically for weeks, man. So I feel like they're going to be prepared, and I feel like he gets his third straight win in the UFC.
The thing with Dhiego Lima is that how many times have we seen him have to learn his lesson, especially coming up at the beginning of his UFC career? I mean, the guy was thrown into fights that he just simply wasn't ready for. You're telling me that, you know, 2 fights into your UFC career, you're 1-1, they throw you in there with Tim Means, you get knocked out, then they're like, you know what, here's Li Jingliang, you know? So Dhiego Lima had to go in there and learn his lessons. Well, now it's time for Luke Jumeau to come in here and learn his, man, because when you get a fight with Jeff Neal, and we're not going to give him shit for pulling out of that fight. We understand why he pulled out of that fight. You did the right thing, Luke, because that would have not ended well. But here with Dhiego Lima, it's basically one of these situations where if Dhiego Lima's chin doesn't get touched properly here, he's going to win this fight. He's got the size, he's got the skill. Now he's got the experience finally, which is what would cost him in the past. But like I said before, now it's Diego's turn to teach someone a lesson, and it's amazing how the tables turn. It's amazing how the sport evolves. You know, I like this kid Jumeau, but he should be fighting at 155 pounds, and I have a feeling he can't make 55, so now I kind of question his diet. I kind of question his motivation. I mean, when he's out there, that shit show Anzai fight, like, dude, that shit was in the palm of his hand in terms of it was within reach, and he just couldn't let it go, you know? It's kind of sad to see, man. I just think he might be a little bit overhyped here. The thing with Jumeau is from time to time, he won't do anything for 2 minutes, and then he'll throw a really explosive 2-piece combo, right? So as long as he doesn't put down Dhiego Lima with something, I think he loses his fight in every facet of the game. So I'm going with Dhiego Lima here, and I think Dhiego should actually be a higher favorite in this spot. Next up in the heavyweight division, we got Tai Bam Bam Tuivasa. He's 10-2, and Sergey Polar Bear Spivak is 9-1. Currently, they got Tai Tuivasa minus 400. The comeback on Sergey Spivak is plus 325. Well, Shaq, you know, last time Sergey Spivak watched, and, you know, we watched some of his regional fights. He's going out there getting these guys with schoolyard headlocks and, you know, the whole bit. It was kind of cute. I was like, okay, this is this new Ukrainian guy making his UFC debut. Wasn't really quite sure what level he was on. I knew Walt Harris had just gotten a split with Arlovsky. We weren't sure where Walt's head was at. Walt goes out there and embarrasses Sergey Spivak in a way where I'm not sure that Sergey Spivak can ever recover mentally. So my question for you, my man, is do you think Sergey Spivak can get this to the mat, schoolyard headlock this guy, or is it second canvas nap in a row time?
Yeah, kind of like what I was saying with Rostem Akhman. It's kind of hard to ask a guy like an entry-level UFC fighter to go in here and fight Walt Harris and Tai Tuivasa for his first 2 UFC fights. Spivak, firstly, just, I don't want to say he's a complete fraud, but like, in the sense that he has to fight top 15 guys, he is a complete fraud. So, unfortunately for him, he's not ready for this level of competition yet. Although, no matter what happens on Saturday, I'm sure it's going to be an improvement from the Walt Harris fight, considering he got ran through right away. But Tuivasa doesn't have the hand speed of a Walt Harris. Fighting two top 15 guys. Spivak is a guy on his local scene. He just pretty much fought guys that didn't fight back. You know, he was out here fighting the ghost of Tony Lopez. I mean, who hasn't beaten Tony Lopez at this point? I mean, he's out here losing bare knuckle matches to Joey Beltran. It was a good bare knuckle match, but Tony Lopez is at this point your standard Friday night jobber. And Spivak, he did his thing, but in the UFC, I just see him getting knocked out again. Tuivasa, although I don't think he's top 10, but like, come on, guys. The guy fought, he beat Andre Arlovski. You know, whether we want to say Andre's lost this out of how many or whatever, Andre Arlovski is still relevant. It's still a tough fight, man. Sakai struggled with him. Walt, I mean, it's still going to be a tough fight. We'll see how Rosenstrike does, but
oh, we know how my boy Big Boy is going to do.
This ain't Alan Crowder no more, bro. It's going to be a tough fight. I think that this is a fight for Tuivasa to get back on track on 100%. I mean, the guys that he's fought, and this is a big step down. It's just a lot of, if he's not running through this guy in less than in under 2 minutes, then, as a bettor, you might get a little pissed off. But Spivak, unfortunately, after this fight, he needs to take a big step down. Hopefully they give him, let's give him the Greg after now. I'm just kidding.
Oh, man.
Let's give him the winner of the Castro and Tafa, something like that.
I give him the winner.
Or the loser, give him the loser of that. I think that Tuivasa gets the win here 100%.
Yeah, look, I learned that Spivak is not UFC caliber in that debut, because lots of heavyweights on the heavyweight scene, you're not really sure this and that, but when they get to the UFC, you know right away. And we knew right away as soon as the ref said go that this kid don't belong. He got hit one time and he did not want to be there anymore. Guess what, buddy? Guess what, Sergey? They fight back in the UFC. You know what I mean? They'll actually hit you back in the UFC. I think on his regional fights, the fights were over before they even began. And in this spot, man, Tai Tuivasa, he's the developing fighter. And not only that, he's just too experienced. He's too fast. The hand combinations are going to be a big problem here. I think he goes out here and knocks out Sergey Spivak in the first round. Co-main event of the evening in the lightweight division. We got Ragin' Al Iaquinta. He's 14-5. And Dan the Hangman Hooker is 18-8. Currently, they got Daniel Hooker minus 165. The comeback on Al Iaquinta is plus 145. Well, Shaq, again, similar to other fights on this card, this did open a pick'em. Interestingly enough, it opened a pick'em with a slight lean on Iaquinta. Now it's minus 165 Hooker, plus 145 Iaquinta. So, another flip, but really it's significant action coming towards Hooker's way. And I mean, it makes sense. He's relatively close to home. He's a Kiwi. He ain't no fake Kiwi at all. My boy Hooker is 100% Kiwi. He's fighting down the street in Melbourne, Australia. And, man, he's been looking better than ever. But Al Iaquinta, he's been stepping up and fighting some tough competition. I mean, even though he's taken a couple L's, we're talking about L's to the champ Khabib and to the legend Donald Cowboy Cerrone, the future Hall of Famer. So you can't give him shit for losing to guys like that. That being said, do you think Al Iaquinta gets back on track here in the biggest fight of his life in terms of people attending it?
Al Iaquinta, he was number 4 in the world before that Cowboy Cerrone fight. He got that number 4 rating off of beating Kevin Lee, who got that rating off of beating Edson Barboza. So, that whole little jumble up there, to be honest, quite frankly, I don't think neither of those guys were ever in the top 5 or ever will be in the top 5. And Hooker, on the other sense, he was on quite the streak before his Edson fight, knocked out Gilbert Burns in the first round in a great performance, knocked out the legends Jim Miller, Ross Pearson. Ross Pearson also was knocked out by Al Iaquinta. He was talking a little bit too much. If you pay close attention, do you see Coach Eugene in his corner in that Edson Barboza fight, and he went out there and he just wasn't ready for that top 5 test, and he got embarrassed. So both of these guys have had their top 5 tests. At least Iaquinta's made the top 5, but both these guys had their top 5 tests and they failed miserably. Hooker bounced back nicely with the win over Vic, but although it was a clean knockout, Vic shouldn't be fighting at 155s, and that was pretty much a foregone conclusion at that point. Now he's coming in here versus Iaquinta. Iaquinta coming off a hellacious beating at Cerrone's hands, but there's no guarantee that Hooker can implement the game plan at the level that Cerrone can. Now, although I think there's some things that Hooker does a little bit better than Cerrone as in terms of his boxing, I think he might have just, he might use his jab a little bit better. Hooker is prone to the occasional big shot, and I feel like that's the best thing that Iaquinta brings to the table. If you stand inside the pocket with him, occasionally there's going to be a big overhand right coming, but for him to throw those overhand rights, I'm seeing a couple things that I feel like Hooker can capitalize on, and one of those things is Iaquinta ducks his head down pretty much to start every combo. I mean, he is a shorter lightweight. He does have a shorter reach than most lightweights. I think it's 68 inches, and he's got to duck that head to get on the inside against these tall guys, and he's fighting a guy that's taller than him. But Hooker throws those check knees so beautifully, man. We've seen him use it time in and time out against guys like Jim Miller, Ross Pearson, and it's just a read he goes to a lot to get guys from to stop him from shooting it. I see a lot of people saying that if the stand up isn't going his way, that Iaquinta is just going to take him down and he'll have the edge there. I'm not fully convinced, man, because I recall Gilbert Burns and Hooker hitting the mat, and Hooker actually put Gilbert Burns in a very threatening choke, and Burns had to respect it, man. Gilbert Burns is a serious black belt. He's out here beating Gunnar Nelson. And what about the Mark DeCasey fight? DeCasey was coming in real aggressive in that third round. What happened when DeCasey tried to shoot in? My boy Hooker wrapped that neck up, and it was still in. I've seen Iaquinta tap several times. I mean, pretty much all his losses. But
you talking about the guy that Mitch Clark finished?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not convinced about this big ground edge for Iaquinta, so I think this is going to be a stand-up fight. I have a lot of respect for the toughness of Iaquinta. I think that he's a dog. I think he's a tough guy, and if he's able to land an overhand right and knock Hooker out, props to him. I just see this matchup favoring Hooker. I just see that I feel like the knees are going to be there. I feel like if he keeps this at distance, I feel like he should be able to pick apart Iaquinta, or just eventually a big shot will land, either a straight like how he landed against Gilbert Burns, or one of those knees. I feel like the only way Al is going to be able to win rounds is either by dropping him multiple times or knocking him out, and I just don't see that happening. I feel like Hooker's too high level of a striker. But as far as the betting perspective, -165 Hooker. I could be wrong. Hooker really hasn't shown that he can swim with the top 6 or 7 like that. But I do see the talent. He has shown glimpses of it against relevant guys like Gilbert Burns. Iaquinta got his ranking by beating a washed up bum by the name of Kevin Lee. So he did beat George Masvidal, in a very controversial decision.
Like, I bet Iaquinta that fight, and I try to give my money back, and they wouldn't take it.
But ultimately, what I'm getting to is I have a lot of respect for Iaquinta, so I probably won't take the -160 just because I could be wrong. The kid is a dog and he's tough. But out of the two fighters, I just see Hooker translating better down the line, and I currently think he's more talented than Iaquinta. And personally, I just feel like Iaquinta's best days are behind him. I'm not saying that he's going to fall off the face of the earth and get out of the rankings. I think he'll maintain his rankings, but I think it'll just be more in the sense of the bottom half of the top 15, So I will go with Hooker. I think he's the better fighter currently. I feel like he's the more talented fighter. He's at home. But, I got a lot of respect for Al, but I think this matchup favors Hooker.
Man, it's going to be one hell of a lightweight matchup in the co-main event at Marvel Stadium in Melbourne, Australia. And, man, I agree with you. I said that Iaquinta being ranked number 4 in the world was complete bullshit. You're telling me beating Kevin Lee means you're top 4 in the world? I just don't see it, man. And because you're seeing these guys like Islam Makhachev is ranked 14, Charles DuBronx 12, Gregor Gillespie 11. You're telling me these guys wouldn't beat Iaquinta? What about Dhiego Ferreira, who's not even ranked? You're telling me he wouldn't go out there and beat Iaquinta? Because he absolutely would, by the way. And that's no disrespect. I like Al. He's an exciting fighter, but the fact that he got to number 4 in the world off beating Kevin Lee? I mean, ask Al's opinion of Kevin Lee. He thinks Kevin Lee's the biggest joke in the world. So me and Al agree on that. So how the hell does beating a big joke make you number 4 in the world? I just don't get it. And as far as Dan Hooker, he did pull the young stunt in the Edson fight, not just in the fight itself. All credit to Edson, but in the lead up, he was pulling the young stunt when, the legend letdown. When the Alex Perez, Joseph Benavidez, the James Vick, Justin Gaethje. He was pulling one of those, and he had to go out there and get the Alex Hernandez, Donald Cerrone. You know what I'm saying? You guys seen it so many times. He was pulling that. He had to go out there and get his lesson, but since that point, comes back, knocks out Vick in the first round. And we can say Vick doesn't belong at 55. I 100% agree. I told Vick on Half the Battle in 2016 that he should move up to 170 pounds, for all those wondering. But he still went out there and got that knockout win, and that's going to elevate his confidence back to know that, hey, I do belong in this top 15 of the lightweight division, because the Edson fight could have made him be like, fuck, maybe I just don't belong, because that was a thorough... That was a whitewash. That was a mauling. But, man, he got it back together, got that knockout. Now here with Iaquinta, this is going to be a hell of a fight. I do think Hooker's the more well-rounded fighter, interestingly enough. I think people disagree with me on that. But what I see from Iaquinta is he's a decent boxer. Occasionally he'll mix in head kicks and, decent jiu-jitsu, some good leg lock attacks. But really it's about the boxing. And if he can counter a nice overhand here, a big left hook, that counter straight right, maybe he can put down a guy like Hooker. Maybe he can even try to break him down with leg kicks. But the thing is, Al loves to duck his head down. And Hooker's timing on those knees is something serious. And we can say, oh, he's going out here knocking out Ross Pearson and Jim Miller, and much respect to both those legends, but, they currently aren't top 15 guys. What about Gilbert Durinho Burns, man? What about Mark DeCasey? You know what I'm saying? He's out here stopping real, legitimate guys. So I don't think that, it's just when he fights old guys, he stops them. He stops young guys too, guys. So, but as far as this matchup is concerned, what I think Hooker needs to look out for is Hooker has a bit of that tall man's defense. Historically throughout his career, he is hittable. I do think his distance has gotten significantly better at 155 pounds now that he can think in there. The weight cuts aren't killing him like they used to. But man, when that knee up the middle lands, I'm very curious to see if Al goes down, if Al gets dropped. We saw Al get dropped with a big knee up the middle his last fight. Granted, Donald Cerrone might be on a completely different level than Dan Hooker, but Dan Hooker, the way he's been mixing it up, his entire array of strikes, that left hook he hit on Vic where he faked him out with the right, then went to the left, that was beautiful. That was like some Max Holloway step through type shit, man. I really liked what I saw from Hooker there. And Iaquinta, I personally thought he should have taken some more time off after the bludgeoning to the hands of Donald Cerrone, and they call it a decision, but I call that a knockout. You know what I mean? You guys remember that front kick to the face. You guys remember that knee up the middle. So much respect to the New York real estate agent, but I'm going with Dan Hooker here for the win. As far as the betting, honestly, even though I'm picking Hooker, it's dog or pass at this current line, man. I'm not laying no minus 160. I think the opening line, more towards a pick 'em, maybe a slight lean on Hooker, okay, but now at this line, it's dog or pass, so I would just go ahead and pass. But that being said, my pick is Dan Hooker to get the win. Main event of the evening for the middleweight belt. We got the champ, Robert the Reaper Whittaker. He's 20-4. And the interim champ, Israel the Last Style Bender Adesanya, is 17-0. Currently, they got Israel Adesanya minus 115 and Robert Whittaker is minus 105. So it's a pick 'em with a slight lean on Israel Adesanya. It originally opened minus 150 for the champ Whittaker. Now, a lot of the talk, Shaq, has been about Whittaker's inactivity, about his injuries, about this and that, about his mental health. But my whole thing is we've seen him off layoffs before, and he's still gone out there and won the fight. So that being said, this is a completely different opponent in Israel Adesanya. I mean, and it's funny to say new generation versus old because Robert Whittaker is the younger fighter here, but Israel's only been in the UFC slightly over a year. You think Israel Adesanya is ready to come out here and dethrone the great Robert Whittaker, or is it first L time?
Man, this is going to be a great fight. Robert Whittaker, he had that great run. He beat Uriah Hall. I remember when he was out here losing decisions to Court McGee, then he moves up to 185, and the run he went on was nothing short of spectacular. He KO'd Brad Tavares stiff. That fight of the night with our homeboy Clint Hester, that was a great fight in Australia as well. Then he fought Uriah Hall, won that fight. The Jacare performance, then the Tall performance, and then the two Yoel fights. And now in the two Yoel fights, in that first Yoel fight, shout out to Yoel, dude's a dog, but we know that Yoel has a very passive style. We know that Yoel at times will stop throwing completely. We know that Yoel will concede rounds at time. And Yoel actually in the first fight got up to a 2-round start and then somehow lost the last 3 rounds when Rob was on one knee hobbling around. And then in the second fight, people think it's controversial. I scored 3 rounds for Rob Whittaker. Rob was just able to land the more volume. He got up to a lead to a point where that even with the knockdowns, he was so far up that it just quite wasn't enough to win on points, and that's pretty much all Yoel's fault. But in terms of the damage sustained,
there's no question who took more damage.
There's no question who was more concussed. You know what I'm saying? Since then he's been gone. He was supposed to fight Kelvin Gastelum, and it was kind of funny. I actually had a bet on Kelvin going into that fight, but Rob had to pull out with the hernia issues. And the real thing is, before that fight, I had respect for Whittaker. I think he's a great champion, but I saw him as more of one of the more vulnerable champions, and that was the main issue, was because he fights with his hands completely down, and he was coming off all that damage against Yoel Romero. And after that second fight, I said that I have a good feeling that maybe Yoel and Rob might not be the same after this fight, which led me to bet on Paulo Costa against Yoel in their most recent fight here recently, and he did lose that fight. So now Rob's coming back, and now he's fighting Adesanya. So Adesanya got the reach advantage. If he stands in front of Rob, this is pretty much going to be a game of, is Whittaker going to land the big left hook, and is he just going to go down? Or is Adesanya just going to stay at range, pick him apart with that jab, eventually find homes for the straight twos after that? And to be honest, I don't think there's anybody in the middleweight division with cleaner punches than Adesanya, and his striking IQ is just beyond the charts. And it's like the leaps he makes from fights to fight. Every time people saying, is this too much? Going into the Tavares fight, all the action in the world was coming in on Tavares in that fight. People were like, I don't know if he's ready for Brad. And I mean, was he ready for Brad? Fuck, was he ready for Brad?
We ain't heard from Brad since.
Fuck, was he ready for Brad? I mean, he put Brad in the fucking hospital, bro. And then his fight, even the Vittori fight. But then after Tavares, he goes in there against Brunson when he's lined at minus 260. He handles Brunson very accordingly. I know Rob did all these things as well. There's been an active guy and there hasn't been. And I'm not bringing in the active because I don't want to get into all that. But just in terms of the skill set, in terms of who I think is going to be ready to go from the opening bell on Saturday night, I think it's going to be Israel Adesanya. I think he's going to use his distance, stick that jab in Robert Whittaker's face, and it's going to, like I said, be a game of can he land that left hook or a big shot upstairs and knock him out. But if that doesn't happen, I see Israel Adesanya landing the cleaner shots, and not even landing the cleaner shots, I see him reacting to the shots better. Because look, we can sit here and say that Rob got hurt against Joel, but Israel also got hurt against Kelvin Gastelum, and Kelvin Gastelum might have the appearance of a smaller 185er, but I'll tell you what, if that kid hits you on the chin, just ask Michael Bisping, ask anybody, if that kid hits you on the chin, don't be
ask every middleweight he's
got 100% knockdown rate. He has dropped every middleweight that he has fought. So I think there's honestly not that much shame into it. And I actually thought his composure in that fight, for a guy that was coming off a fight against Bronson and Anderson Silva, the composure he had in that fight was remarkable because he was getting better as that fight. After the fourth round, look at the fucking fifth round he puts in, bro. You ever seen a fifth round like that in a title fight? I mean, for a second, I thought Kelvin was dead. I mean, there was some people in the crowd that legit thought that, you know what I'm saying? It was a sight to see. So I just side with Adesanya just because I feel like he is just flat out the better striker here. I feel like he's just in a better spot mentally. I feel like Whittaker's a guy where before his last fight, I felt like the pressure was getting. I'm not saying he pulled out because of that, but I just felt like the pressure was getting to him a little bit. I do have just some concerns on whether he's going to be able to take that type of damage after the Yoel Romero fight. I mean, what's happened after that Yoel Romero fight? He's been sick the entire time. So I got a lot of respect for him. It would not shock me if he came out here and got the knockout, but I just feel like the recipe's brewing for Israel to get this win here. And I think it's going to happen. Generally, I would be because it looks like Whittaker's trending to close as a dog. Generally, I'd take the champ as the dog, but in this particular situation, I just have some doubts about Rob Whittaker's health that I gotta go with Israel here. So I'll take Israel to become the undisputed middleweight champion and eventually get that fight with Johnny Bones Jones.
Yeah, I mean, look, not only does Israel have a 7-inch reach advantage here, he knows how to use his reach, which is one of the most important things you can do. And guess what? Robert Whittaker knows how to close distance. So in the early going, it's going to be absolute chaos. The difference here is that Robert fights the entire fight with his hands down, and Israel does too to an extent, but Israel knows, I mean, they both got great distance, but statistically speaking, Israel does get hit less than Rob Whittaker, and what I think is that, oh shit, you're telling me Charles DuBronx is fighting Jared Gordon?
How the fuck do you make that matchup?
Is that a misprint?
Inside Pilot, too.
Oh, man.
Max bet, Charles.
What kind of line we getting there? No, but
Take him down, bud.
Just dangle off his neck, Charles. No, but Rob knows how to close a distance. Rob is very deceptively fast, and I felt like he was one of the original guys to move up from welterweight to 85s back when dudes were moving up weight classes and having success. Remember when Dustin Poirier moved from 45 to 55, goes on a big streak, ends up winning the interim belt. Kelvin Gastelum makes it to UFC title shot. Robert Whittaker ends up winning gold. So a lot of these guys moving up, they did really well. And Rob was one of the first ones to do that. I mean, he said at 170, like, the weight cuts were messing up his hearing. I mean, the guy's going out there getting dropped by Court McGee. You understand what I'm saying? So he had to move up to 185. And since that point, look what he's done, man. He's an unbelievable champion, one of my all-time favorite fighters, a money train for me like crazy. But let's be honest about who we were beating in the money train era. We were beating Jacare Souza, who I love and respect, but, is 40 years old. And, guys along that line. Brad Tavares, But Israel Adesanya, on the other hand, I think he brings something completely different and fresh and unique to the table. I think he actually can stand up and strike with a guy like Robert Whittaker, which other people haven't been able to do in the past. But the biggest difference here is that I think that when Robert is fighting with his hands down, I think that when one of those straights hits him on the chin, man, I really do see him getting significantly hurt. I mean, we saw him wobbling all over the place with Yoel. But the thing is, Yoel likes to chill, and then he'll burst out of nowhere. He likes to do absolutely nothing and then burst. Whereas Israel can pepper you the entire time. And if he gets you hurt, he's not going to try to rush you and blow his load and wing a couple overhands and hope he puts you down. He's going to precisely finesse you and throw something down the pipe, set you up, feint, fake you out, and you're not going to see it coming. And I think somewhere in maybe the late first, maybe the second, maybe the third, I do think Israel Adesanya puts the great Robert Whittaker down and wins the belt. And another thing I want to say, I love Robert Whittaker. I'm a huge fan. But one thing I've noticed about a lot of these champions, you'll hear a lot of champions talk about after they lose the belt, they felt a tremendous relief and like a big weight was lifted off their shoulders, because being a champion is a completely different pressure than just being a fighter. And I could be wrong. This could be all speculation. Maybe Robert Whittaker comes out here and knocks out Israel Adesanya, and I look like a total idiot for saying this. But I have a personal belief, and this is what I think, that Robert Whittaker is one of those guys that doesn't really dig the championship pressures. He doesn't like being a champion anymore. And someone's going to be like, he doesn't like being a champion. He doesn't like holding a belt around. Like, what do you mean he doesn't like being the best in the world? That's not what I mean, guys. Being a champ comes with an extra pressure. You have a magnifying glass on you. Everybody watches your every move. You have no privacy anymore. You're in the limelight constantly. I don't think Rob Whittaker is that kind of guy. I think he's kind of over it, man. Even Matt Hughes was like, dude, when I lost that belt, it was like the biggest relief of my life. I thanked BJ Penn for beating me. Rose Namajunas said that shit. Anderson Silva thanked Weidman for beating him. Like, after, and these are long-reigning champions we're talking about, not Rose, but Anderson Silva was, Matt Hughes was. And even though Whittaker hasn't officially defended his belt, and that's because Yoel missed weight, not for any other reason, I have the suspicion that the pressure of being the champ, he just don't like it, man. He wants to be a low-key guy. But stylistically speaking, I think that if he doesn't knock out Israel with a leaping left hook or his sneaky high kick, I think he's in for a long night. And it's always scary siding on the side. It's always scary being on the side that everyone's action is on in terms of a pick. That doesn't make me feel good that, he was the underdog and now he's the favorite. So, from a betting perspective, unless you feel like you have a serious edge, maybe consider passing and just sit back and enjoy such an incredible fight between two champions. That's what I'm going to do. But my official pick is Israel Adesanya to come out here, defeat the great Robert Whittaker, and become the undisputed UFC middleweight champion. And I think that after he wins this fight, if he does indeed go out there and win, holy shit, the superstar he's going to become. And he also has some things that he's going to tell everybody that it's gonna put the MMA world on its side. So I can't wait for all that shit to happen. But my pick is Israel Adesanya. Well, Shaq, we got to tell him about our sponsor, Flav. Make sure you hit up Flav at FlavCBD.com, the best CBD products on the market. Loving my blueberry gummies right now. Got the pineapple, the mango, all on point. Make sure we're ready mentally for these fights Saturday. Hit up our boys at Flav right now. Well, Shaq, let's talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for UFC 243?
My fight to watch is going to be Dhiego Lima versus Luke Jumeau. Luke Jumeau, we haven't seen him in a long time. He's a Kiwi. He's fighting at home. And Dhiego Lima just got a new UFC contract. It seems like he's putting things together. This is all the makings of a big showdown. Possibly someone may go to sleep here or someone may get severely outclassed in front of their family. So, I feel like that's my fight to watch.
It's going to be a hell of a fight. But for me, my fight to watch is the co-main event of the evening between two talented top 15 strikers in Iaquinta and Dan Hooker. I think that this is that fight where these two are going to stand and bang until one man falls. And if this does go all 3 rounds, I think it's going to be a serious war where heavy leather is exchanged. And the winner is going to take that next step up the ranking, so I can't wait to see what happens. Dan Hooker versus Iaquinta is my fight to watch. Well, Shaq, who is your fighter to watch for UFC Melbourne?
My fighter to watch is going to be a surprising one. It's Megan Anderson. Look, this girl was supposed to fight Cyborg and this and that. And,
could you imagine?
And her first 2 fights have gone so badly that she is dead. She has to win this fight. Or, I don't know if she's going to get cut, but I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. She needs a win in Australia. At least they're putting her on her home turf to get a win. But win or lose, this girl, if she wins, it's most likely going to be a KO. But if she loses, it's going to be an epic stun. And I mean, don't be shocked if you see James Krause in the team like this with the baseball. I'm like, no, Megan.
Megan, wait.
And so, she's my fighter to watch. She's supposed to be living up to all this hype, and she hasn't done that. So if she's ever going to start, this is the time on Saturday, and she needs this win bad.
And man, I just want to see how those weight cuts are going, because word on the street is that this chick walks around 200 pounds. So for her to make 145, dude, those weight cuts must take so much out of her. So I can't wait to see how she performs, especially with 40,000+ people in attendance. I mean,
my dad gonna be there, granny, auntie.
It's a different kind of vibe. For me, my fighter to watch is Robert the Reaper Whittaker, the UFC middleweight champion. There's been a lot of questions about his health, not just physically, but mentally as well, his inactivity. People are saying that he doesn't have it anymore, and I think that Robert Whittaker, from what I've heard, is that he's in the best shape of his life for this fight. He's actually making gains in the gym. I want to see what he brings to the table, and you count out a guy like Robert Whittaker, and oftentimes he will go out there and knock the other guy out. I mean, I remember when he was plus 205 against Jacare Souza. Now, granted, this is Israel, the last style bender Adesanya, completely different level, but Robert Whittaker has risen to the occasion before, beat Yoel Romero twice. I want to see exactly what he does here in this massive fight down under. So for that reason, Robert the Reaper Whittaker is my fighter to watch. Well, Shaq, we did it. It's going down this Saturday or Sunday if you're in Australia. UFC 243, Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker. Cannot wait. Make sure you get our bets at bestfightpicks.com. Use the promo code Matador to save 15% off any package. Shout out to our boy, Emmanuel Matador Sanchez. Just got his next fight announced. Subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify. Follow me at Best Fight Picks. Follow Shaq at MMA Genius 05. Our Instagram, Best Fight Picks Official. Shaq's Instagram, ShaqBFP. Our newest sponsor, Flav. Go to flavinc.com. Go to flavcbd.com. Make sure you let them know that Half the Battle sent you. Thank you guys so much for your support. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.